We'll just go ahead and get started. So, I am really excited to be talking to you, Georgette. As I was saying before, I have been very aware of your story along the way and the shares and posts you've had in the community. So, I'm really excited to be actually hearing it from you. And I think the best thing to do is to just kind of share your story, share where you started, how it went and where you are now, just kind of taking us through the journey. But I will just ask you questions along the way. And so, yeah, you can maybe just start by sharing a little bit about who you are, maybe where you're calling from, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name's Georgette Allen. I live in New Mexico, longtime resident here, have grew up in the city I live in, Farmington, New Mexico. Never moved, so had planned to, but never did. But that's okay. I live in a great community, great networking, good support. Um, so I've had a couple of careers actually. My first career was in human services, so I actually have a social work background. So I did that for 13 years, got a little fried with that, and then moved into public relations communications. So I did that working in government. So the first part of that, I was working at our police department, victim advocate first. Again, I got kind of fried working in human services for a myriad of reasons. Pitched an idea to him about having a full-time PR person in government. They call that a public information officer or a PIO. They loved the idea. A lot of agencies had them. We didn't have one. And so I started doing that. I was with them 6 more years
Wow.
before moving over to the city manager's office to basically do the same thing there. And then I helped form a marketing division over there because it was kind of like different divisions had, some marketing people or a social media manager or whatever. So I helped kind of unify and get an actual division together for that because it's a huge entity. So anyway, I did that for about 3 years before leaving and then going out on my own. So yeah, here I am.
Well, first of all, it's amazing. I can already see in your story like some entrepreneurial tendencies. I don't know if you have noticed that, but I would
Yeah.
love to hear like, so then what made you leave that world? What was the catalyst?
So, so the city, so I was there for 15 years working in government and I did love it. It was a lot of fun. I especially liked when working at over at the police department. My husband's actually retired law enforcement. My daughter's a police officer there. So we all have kind of worked together through the years. It was kind of neat.
Oh,
Um, but I was on all the time, and that's why I transitioned over to the city side in the city manager's office to kind of slow down a little bit. But it was still a lot. And I was just kind of fried, especially after COVID, because it was such a difficult time. I managed social media on there, the communications all during that time. And,
mhm.
people can be really mean on social media. And so even though I knew it wasn't, directed at me, after a while, it kind of takes a toll on you, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I had about 10 years left before I could retire. And I put this, I shared this with you in my story when I sent you my stuff. And I don't know if there's any other government workers in the group, and maybe this is for teachers and stuff too, similar that have that retirement. There's a big focus when you work in government. When is retirement? Like people ask you that all the time. When do you get to retire? And it almost feels like it gives you this mindset of when do you get to retire? So your life can actually start then.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Hmm.
It sounds kind of silly, but my husband said the same thing. He actually did retire from there. But yeah, you get in this mindset, I only have X amount of years left and then I can retire and really start my life. And so I've always wanted to work for myself. I had 10 years left at the city and I didn't want to wait 10 more years to do it. I was done. I was ready to move on and build something that was my own and that was it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Isn't I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the reason that there's like such a focus on retirement and how many years left is because you get a pretty good like pension, right? And
Yeah.
so
Oh yeah, it's great.
yeah, so but it was because you had 10 years left that you were like that's too long. Because I think
Yeah,
some people stick to the path
they
because
do.
that carrot is just like dangled in front of them. So
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
it's not bad. Like if you start younger, I didn't hire on until I was a little bit older. So like my daughter hired on very young. She'll retire young, have a whole second career, she finishes out, whatever. But, for me, I'm just like, I'm not, I don't want to wait 10 years. I could be so fried and then be like, well, now I don't want to do anything on my own. So I was just
Right.
ready. Mhm.
So what was the final thing? So then what happened? You decided like how you decided copywriting, you decided like how
Oh,
did you
yes.
come to write Your Way to
So
Freedom?
yeah, so I've always liked writing. And even in my job, I did a lot of that with public relations. You write all sorts of things. So I really enjoyed that. And so I got online, Googled how to make money writing. I actually there was a couple of other courses that came up, and I looked at those. I looked at a few other ones, got, the freebies and stuff, and it sounded cool, but they didn't really vibe with me. I just didn't, I wasn't sold on the vibe. And it's not that anything was wrong with it. I just, wasn't feeling a
I
connection
know.
to, but I was like, okay, this sounds cool. And then of course, because I was Googling and searching stuff, then all of a sudden one of your ads popped up. I was like, oh, great. Okay. So I'm going to get this one. And I got your master class. And I think I was pretty much sold by, I don't know, the second one that I received in there. I was like, okay, I liked the way you organized everything, you put everything together. I just like the vibe, the way you talk and stuff, your tone, everything. It worked for me. And so I was like,
Right.
yep, this is the one.
And
So
so was there anything though that was going on in your life that was like why now? You know what I mean? Because I
mm,
mean, unless there wasn't, but I feel like more often than not, like to make a decision like that, something is usually happening,
I
outside of
was
the
I
day
was
to day.
pretty fried. I
So
mean, I
just
was
being fried.
on
So it's like
all the time. Yeah. And that was one of
wall.
the hardest things when I left was to, I carried two phones for years, but pretty much
Oh,
15 years
okay.
while I was there. Because even as an advocate for a while, I was on call with that. So I had two phones
Wow.
all the time. I was on. If, somebody called, you are on all the time.
Mhm.
And so you kind of just get fried after a
Right.
while. And
Mhm.
then even though I loved what I did, like I loved my coworkers. I have great coworkers. My bosses were amazing. I can't say I'm not one of the ones that came from, oh my gosh, I was tired of, my boss not being supportive or anything. I didn't have that. Police department, my chief of police was amazing. He was my boss. The city manager was amazing. My coworkers, my team. It was just, it's so much though, like doing so many things and so many moving parts. And then being on call and always feeling like you're on, I was just like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. And I think maybe COVID pushed it over the edge. That was really like just during that time and managing communications and stuff for that. I think that kind of really
Like
like
accelerated
was
the
like,
feeling.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So,
Okay.
and that was part of the reason too. I had mentioned that, but I didn't say that here. I started looking online for a couple of reasons. I mean, ultimately, I did want to work for myself, but I also kind of wanted a backup plan in case things got really bad during COVID because
Mm.
municipalities, we are paid through sales tax. In New Mexico, it's gross receipts tax. So if people aren't out spending money, there's budget cuts. So we could have possibly had furloughs or, anything like that. And so thought, okay, what's a side hustle that I could get together pretty quick in case that happens? And so,
Wow. It's so interesting because I feel like more often than not, especially government jobs, people tend to think of them as like the more like secure, safe,
yeah,
like
yeah.
safe route. And we've just continued to see how that's like no longer the case. Have you had any thoughts or beliefs that have changed over time now that you're your own boss and thinking that, a government job versus doing the whole entrepreneurial thing is more or less secure, or how you feel about that?
Or less secure. I mean, you're right. The government stuff is pretty secure, at least where I'm at, our municipality. I think the higher up you get, it's maybe not so much,
Mhm.
I can't really speak for like state or federal. I don't work there, but yeah, I get to control my income now. And I also don't. So when you work in government, you're typically or a position that I held, and same thing, in kind of my colleagues and stuff, we're all salary. And actually, I've been salary for years, even when I worked in human services, they're all salary jobs. And so if you need extra money, there's no overtime or anything. You always have to work a second job or something like that. And
Mhm.
now it's like, oh, I'll just, maybe take on an extra project or whatever, or lighten my load for the summer because I don't, want to do as much. And um, so I really like that. So yeah, you do have so much more control of how much money you're making. Even though, there is that stability, but we've been through, I went through recession 2009. It was the same thing.
Mhm.
And our city manager did an amazing job making sure people weren't furloughed and stuff, but they would cut positions as people left and they wouldn't backfill them and stuff. So you're always thinking about those things. And at the time, my husband and I both worked there. And so it was really scary. Like if we both get furloughed, there's a whole lot of money leaving our household.
Mhm.
So,
Wow. Yeah.
control
I
over
mean,
that.
that's a huge thing to consider is when you
Yeah.
have both partners
Mm,
working in the same industry and if it takes a hit. Yeah,
yeah.
that's wild. Okay, so you are burnt out, you join Write Your Way to Freedom, and then what happens next? Who are you writing for? What does your clients look like? I'm super excited to talk about your niche because it's one that I know quite a few people have an interest in, but it's
Okay.
not a really common one. So I just love
Okay.
to hear you speak to that. Like what happened?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I purchased the course in, it was like October 2020, launched my business that same December, but didn't do a whole lot with it because it was crazy at work. And then finally started cold emailing, picked up a couple of clients. When I started out, I wanted to do the health and wellness. Like I always thought if I didn't do what I did, I would go back to school and be a nurse or something like that because I really like the healthcare. But I learned as I got older, I don't really want to apply that. I just like the knowledge. And so I was
Mm,
like, oh, I want to write, about healthcare and stuff like that. So I had gotten a client in kind of that niche, but I was like, oh, I don't know that I'm really enjoying this as much as I don't know, like reading about it. I don't know if I really want to write about it. So I had just a few different clients along the way. And so finally I landed on, I work with service-based businesses, but I also work with government, education, and political candidates. Is that the one that you were?
yeah, people ask that all the time, and I'm like, let's hear about that. That's wild.
I did not set out to do that. So again, I'm a lifetime resident here and I worked in government. And so when I left, I got a lot of support. I mean, all the years I networked, it kind of came with my job too, being the PIO. So I'm involved in a ton of things in the community. A lot of people know me. So that networking paid off, but I left. And so a couple of our city councilors last year were running, and actually the mayor was running for reelection. And they're like, hey, can you handle my campaign? And I was like, well, okay. I mean, and some of that's outside of copywriting. There's other things that I provide that just because I can do it and I'm familiar with it. And I'm like, okay, they were familiar with my work. And so I took on probably a little too many because those are a lot of moving parts.
Mhm.
And again, if it wasn't just the copyright I am doing, there's a little bit of PR and some other like design stuff or whatever. Um, but so this year I've got a couple again, and actually in our neighboring state. So we're traveled, and there's some people who I kind of knew from years and years ago, moved to the neighboring state up in Colorado and contacted me and said, hey, we're running and we heard you, do this, provide this service. And so um, I've learned that, it's really the same thing. I mean, political candidates need copywriters too, because what do? We help people see, look, the product or service that we're writing for, that we're helping our clients sell is solving a problem, right? And that's essentially what electeds are doing. They're saying, okay, to their target, their constituents, their voters, what is it? What are your issues? What are you struggling with in life? It's typically the economy, jobs, stuff like that. Well, they're selling, this is my ideas and this
Yeah.
is how I'm going to fix it. So essentially they all need copywriters too.
No, 100%. Every time
Yeah.
I hear a political speech, I'm like, this is just copywriting. Like this is so like just steeped in copywriting techniques. Like,
It's
holy crap.
true. It's true. I
So,
have some rules though. I'm like, okay, no shenanigans, no shady business, like, you know what
right,
I mean? So, and I haven't run across that.
regulated.
I do local stuff. I don't know if I want to move up, the ladder on that. I'm fine with the local people, it's pretty
Yeah.
okay here, but I don't know if I'd want to move up higher on that.
Yeah. So would they hire like for their campaign specifically copywriters? Like, is that somebody who's like on the team, or is it usually like somebody who's kind of like enveloped in the marketing aspects? Like, what does it look like?
So for locals, I'm kind of a catch-all. I'm doing a
Right.
lot of stuff. So I'm writing, so I design their websites for them and of course write all the copy and stuff. And then I do, like the ads and stuff like that. If you get into the bigger elections, oh yeah, they have entire teams, their communications person and their marketing person and their campaign person who kind of organizes everybody and stuff. And I'm sure that they have writers and stuff, speech writers, they probably have a completely separate speech writer, which is again, same thing. That's a lot of, copywriting right there because they're pitching their ideas on how to
Yeah.
fix everything. But for me, I mean, these are local, they're municipal elections and our county stuff. A couple of DAs, district attorneys. So they're really local and small elections. So I'm kind of just juggling all the things. I provide a package, and that's been a learning experience. So, how to price your stuff, or, because I'm used to just with the copywriting clients, right? You put together a package, like you're getting 4 blogs a month or, whatever. I'm writing website copy. But there's a lot of moving parts. And as campaigns go on, things come up and they're asking you all sorts of things too, even though you're like, okay, I'm only doing this. You
Mm-hmm.
really end up, the kind of that scope creep. But again, it kind of falls in my purview because I worked in public relations. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to tell you no. Of course, I'll help you, but it's been a learning experience for me on how to make sure I'm getting compensated for all that.
Yes, yes. I could
Yeah.
totally see that because that's something that I'd always suspected is just
Mm.
like the way, and I don't know anything from personal experience, but the way it seems is that, when there's campaigns and there's marketing efforts and stuff, it's kind of like an all hands on deck situation, it seems
Yeah.
like. So it's not going to be your traditional like marketing team that's more siloed and that you'd find for like a marketing agency for, I don't know, e-commerce or something. So I've always, that's kind of how I imagined it would be. And yes,
Yeah.
I'm sure as you go like up the ladder, it gets more and more like
Oh,
special.
yeah.
There's more funds to have like a specialist in a particular area.
Yeah,
Really
exactly.
wonderful questions, but that have been asked. With the scope creep, do you find that you're pricing by project or like as an hourly consultant?
So if you're specifically asking about the political campaigns, I started out as doing just pricing a project, knowing this is how long the campaign is going to run. And I think, you'll need a website and we'll do like 3 posts a week. I don't manage social media. I just write like what I call pillar posts. I tell them I'm not answering questions. I'm not doing anything out. So I was selling a package, but,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of worked for me last year with the candidates I had. This year it's not working the same. I have some who are kind of newer to it. And so you get a lot of phone calls with questions and stuff like that. So moving forward, I'm doing a retainer and then doing an hourly rate because you end up they're asking you all sorts of stuff, advice on stuff or what, should I do? So again, it kind of crosses from that copywriting piece to more that public relations type of piece too. And
Mm-hmm.
again, that's not something that anybody on here has to do. I've chosen to go ahead and do that because it's something, that I'm familiar with or whatever. So, um,
That's
yeah.
super interesting. That makes a lot of sense. I like the idea of doing, kind of a retainer package rate, but then obviously having kind of like an a la carte an hourly rate just to account for, I'm sure, what would just turn into massive scope creep otherwise.
It
Um,
does.
do you see yourself staying in the political government niche long term, or do you want to do something else?
I don't know. I'm one of those people I get bored with stuff. And so that's why I tried to kind of niche down in the beginning, like I said, with like health and wellness and stuff. But I'm like, well, I get bored. So what if I say service-based business? I didn't really want to do like e-commerce or anything. That didn't really interest me. So I'm like service-based. So it's still a niche, but there's so many areas,
Mhm.
in there that I could serve. So I don't know. I go back and forth. On a good day, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I could do this. And then on a bad day, I'm like, I'm not taking these on anymore.
I so feel that. Oh my gosh. I think we've all felt that about our niche. And
Mhm.
honestly, the way that you're describing how you go about your niche is really, I think, how it should be done. It's like it's there to give you guidance. It's there to give you some like bumpers, right?
Yeah.
So that you stay a little bit focused, especially when you're first starting out and trying to learn you're trying to learn so much. So it helps give you
Yeah.
like that focus. It also helps kind of shortcut the like learning process because you're not learning for like 10 different, industries. At the end
Hmm.
of the day, like you get to hand select your clients.
Yeah.
So reach out to the people you want to work with. And if it's like super random, that's okay. You don't have to go redo your website, It's
Yeah.
like it's fine.
Yeah.
So I think that sounds like a really like healthy approach to just how you're dealing with it.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear just kind of to like take a turn. I'd love to hear from you a little bit about like just like what your life looks like today now that you're your own boss. Like what do you love about it? What are the hard things about it? You know?
So the number one thing I love about it is like no alarm clock in the morning.
Me
I'm one of
too.
those people. I struggled my entire life. When my daughter was little, I'd always struggle getting an alarm clock goes off, getting her dressed and off, doing her thing at school and, getting me about my day. And I just hated it. I never got used to it. My mom always used to tell me, oh, you get used to it. You get in a routine. No, no,
Mhm,
my body, my brain doesn't like it.
mhm.
If I get up too early, I feel horrible all day. It's bad. I don't know. So that's probably my number one thing that um, I love so much. And it sounds so little, and morning people probably don't understand it.
Well, I'm a morning person and I still get it. I don't know what it is about having an alarm wake me up that just like is the worst way to start my day. Like
Yeah.
nothing bums me out more
Yeah.
than a phone beeping to like get
Yeah.
me up. I just need to wake up with like sunshine. Like I just
Yeah.
want like the sun to come in the window.
Yeah.
It to be like whenever it feels right. I don't know.
Yeah. I
So
wish that for
I get it.
everybody. I love it. I had somebody local wanted me to come speak at a group. And I was like, okay, yeah. And my friend who runs the Chamber of Commerce here, she leans over and she says, they meet at 7 a.m. I was like, that's going to be a no. No, thank you. And I love that I can say no to stuff now. I'm not obligated to, I'm like, sorry.
So get it. It's so funny. It's sometimes like the little wins are the ones that matter most. The other little win for me was like no more fluorescent lights. I was like,
No.
I would die in fluorescent lights. So I
Yeah.
get it. It's the little ones.
Uh,
So what else? What else is some of your wins that you've got going on?
I like the freedom and I had, somewhat of freedom in my job before coming and going, but not to the extent, of course, that I do now. My daughter works crazy schedules, and when she calls me at the last minute because she's off and is like, "Hey mom, you want to go get lunch?" I can do that and I'm not stressed out that, I can't be gone too long or whatever. And, that's especially important to me because she works such a dangerous job too. I'm like, I don't want to have to tell her no when she says, "Hey, let's go shopping," or "Let's go," when she has a little moment of time. She works her schedule, she teaches at the academy. There's so much going on and our schedules would conflict a lot. And so, I want to make sure that I get those times with her. Same thing. I have a mom. I'm an only child. So, I have my mom is 78 and she's doing pretty good, but she's kind of slowing down. She's having more doctor's appointments, and sometimes we have to drive up to Colorado for them and stuff. And I don't want her to go do that by herself. You know what I mean? So being there, helping her and advocating for her and making sure she's understanding, what the doctor is telling her and all that. So those are those things that, I'm so grateful that I can do that now. I have those days. I can make my schedule around those, or truly if I need to, I can just drop what I'm doing and go. So
Yeah, I mean, like that's the most important stuff. That's like life. It's like letting life come first.
yeah,
It's just like the best feeling ever.
yeah.
And so I think you'd mentioned now you're working only about 25 hours a week to kind of hit your goals and That's also awesome.
Yeah.
Feels good, right?
Yeah, it
Not having to
does.
clock in and clock out.
And sometimes it's less. This week, I'm pretty sure I didn't hit 25 hours.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. I think that it sounds like you found a really good balance, and it sounds like you really love your clients.
I
And
do. Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
amazing. Well, so I love to ask, well, first, is there anything else you wanted to kind of like be sure to share? Was there like any wisdom you'd like to impart on some of the students or anything that we missed?
I don't know, just the mindset stuff, was so important to me in your course. And sometimes I have to go back and revisit. I watch your YouTube stuff all the time and I'll go back and read because, we all have that day that we're feeling, less than creative or motivated. And I'm like, oh, I'm so stupid. Why am I even doing this? I'm so bad. You know what I mean? And so I have to do something to, shift my mindset. And so I will typically go watch, one of your YouTube videos or another student success story or something like that. But, I think that's so important to not stop working on that. If you think you get to a point that, okay, I've got the mindset going, it's a roller coaster. It's an up and down because even when I've been successful and I've not had to market myself very much. I don't cold email. Oh, that was the other thing. Like leaning into your community. If you have a community that get out there. And mine was super supportive when I made my big Facebook announcement, hey, I'm leaving the city. People were so supportive, and my phone started ringing and stuff with jobs, and I'm very fortunate to have that. But lean into your community too. I know not everybody loves cold emailing or the social media or however it is. So never forget your community and going out there and kind of getting involved in stuff too and making those connections. I think that's a good takeaway.
Yeah, that's huge. I actually learned that from the students of Write Your Way to Freedom over the years. I just saw how it was such a better place to start than jumping right into cold emails, just reaching out. Even people that are, you barely know, but
Yeah.
at least they know you.
Yeah.
And that can be it can open doors in incredible ways. So I
Especially in
really
small
love that.
communities. I think, our community just likes to support one another, and they're huge on supporting local businesses, small businesses and stuff. So I think that's very invaluable, yeah, get out there, put yourself out there. And sometimes I know that's scary too, because you're actually physically putting yourself out there. When you're cold emailing somebody, it's like, well, I don't really know you. So like I'll never see you in person. So I know sometimes it can be a little scary, like actually going out there in person and doing stuff. But it was so beneficial for me. So
Yeah, yeah. But it's one of those things that like once you do it, it gets a little easier each and every time. And then on the other side of it, it feels really good
yeah.
having that support.
Hmm.
That was it. This is amazing. I love the niche direction that you've gone. I know lots of people have questions about this niche in particular.
Yeah.
So
Oh
it's
yeah. Do you have
very,
more in there?
I don't think so. I think we covered all the questions. But I would love to just kind of wrap up with I love to always ask like if you could go back and you were when you were, just on the fence about like should I go this path? Should I take this course? Like, the fork in the road, and you could just have a quick conversation with you and have a conversation with you and maybe you had a moment of doubt, and just like what are some of the things that you would say to yourself back then knowing what you know now?
That it's absolutely possible. People do it every single day. But it's absolutely possible. And I wish I could have found it sooner. I truly do, which I probably shouldn't do that, right? You dwell on something like, oh, I wish I could have done this sooner. I wish I could have had this when my daughter was little and been around more, but it happened when it did. And that's great. But yeah, I think, yeah, just knowing that it's possible. Um,
To be a copywriter, to be a freelancer, what specifically?
to be a freelancer, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
To go out there and just do it. And again, it is scary, especially when you worked in industry. I mean, 15 years, that's a long time. That was especially a long time for me. Like I said, I get bored of stuff. But and when you make a really good salary and you carry the benefits, that was one of the big things. And I see that in our community a lot.
Mhm.
Too, in the copywriting community, a lot of people ask about that and they're scared about that as well. And I totally get it. I carried the benefits for us because my husband's retired. He runs a very small nonprofit now, so there are no benefits there. So, these are things that we discussed. And I said, I'm going to have to, we'll either get it on the marketplace or through retirement. And, it was more, but I said, I don't care. People do this all the time. They do it all the time and they figure it out and they make it work. So, I said, I can't stay somewhere for the next 10 years and do the whole, what if I never, fulfill my lifelong dream? What if? I said, I can't do that. I need to do it now. So,
Yeah, that is a thing that holds people back. And it's so figure outable and it's not. And the thing is you're choosing an option where you can make more, like we talked about earlier, where, when you're in a salary position, it's not like you can just be like, how do I make an extra $500 a month? Like that's not an option.
no,
So you
you
go
have to
out.
have a job, a side job or a side hustle after working over 40 hours a week. A lot of positions, at least 40 hours or more. And so then you're exhausted. Like, who wants to have to do that?
Right. But in this,
So,
you're like choosing a path where you're like, okay, so to do this path, I'm gonna have to make $500 a month more, whatever it is, to cover insurance for the family. So I'll just have another $500 a month project.
yeah.
Like, and it's
Yeah.
probably not gonna add that much time to my workload. Like,
Yeah.
you
And it
know,
truly doesn't, because if you take away, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned too. When you take away all the other things that you have to do when you are an employee somewhere, like all the meetings, and again, I worked in government, so I'm going to like city council head meetings, department head meetings, like a lot of stuff. There's a lot of meetings. When you remove all that stuff from your day, you can get a lot of stuff done. You don't need 40 hours. So yeah, taking on, I'll just take on another project, but it's not going to consume your time like the full-time job, if that makes sense. It really doesn't. We don't need the 40 hours.
totally,
Yeah.
totally, totally. No, that's huge. And I'm so glad you spoke to that because I know it's a big, yeah, as you said, we see it in the community all the time. It's a big thing that causes a lot of fear for people when they're first starting out. And then they realize just how figure outable it is.
It
So
is. Yeah. And I would encourage anybody, just keep plucking along. Keep plucking along,
yeah.
write out your goals, do your positive affirmations, whatever it is that, keeps you going down that road. Is doing journaling. It's a hit and miss for me. Sometimes I'm consistent, sometimes I'm not, but again, when I feel myself getting in that spot that I'm like, the downward slide, I have to do those things to get me remotivated and uplifted again and stay the course, because we're all human and we all do that. And I'm like, I made it this far. This is
Oh, totally. And I think that, I mean, that's the same for me, right? I'm not doing the same morning routine I did when I first was starting out. It's more of like a thing where I'm like, oh, I could really use a morning routine lately. Like my thoughts could use some help. I could use some direction and inspiration. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool that you can kind of always come back to and you can make it change and shape shift it to match whatever like season of life you're in. So
And that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
yeah.
And you're completely in control. I think that's the biggest thing. One of the biggest things, besides not waking to the sound of an alarm clock, is that I'm in control. I can, decide, okay, I want to add this to my business, which I see so many people, doing courses and stuff now in their own businesses or whatever, in their copywriting businesses in the group. And I like that. It's mine. I get to build it. I get to do what I want. I don't have to ask permission or, pitch an idea and somebody doesn't like it or whatever. It's mine.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. Not having to ask permission is a huge one for me. So I feel
Mhm.
that one too.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I've been wanting to hear it for a while. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
And I know this is going to resonate with people, especially our people who come into the community from government positions. That's a solid amount of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I see a lot of teachers and nurses and stuff in there. I assumed there were probably government people, but if anybody ever wants to message or something, you have a question, feel free to pick my brain.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet.
Oh,
Well, thank you guys for all being here. And yeah, just appreciate you, Georgette. And
thanks.
I'll see
Appreciate
you in the
you.
community. Can't wait to see what's next.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.